Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the My Footballing Journey series. Today I'm joined by Ollie O'Connell. Ollie's worked for clubs in both the UK and abroad and is currently the Senior Recruitment Analyst at RWDM in Belgium. Ollie joins us today to discuss his journey so far, the future, and advice for young scouts looking to forge careers in the game. Ollie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Nice to be here. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. It's getting a little bit warmer. The days are getting a little bit longer, so it feels like we're getting there now. The end of the season is near.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing good. And yourself?
Yeah, same as you. Enjoying the running, so to speak. I think this one after the last international break is when it gets serious, especially like with the Easter weekend in the UK.
Yeah,
So yeah, just looking forward to the running now, yeah.
yeah, very true. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us. As I've already mentioned, this podcast is all about journeys. So let's start at the beginning of yours. How did the whole journey for football begin for you?
I suppose like a lot of people, probably when I was sort of 18 at uni, realised I weren't going to be good enough to play at any decent level. I had a P&E season ticket since I was like 4 or 5, just been a football fanatic. And at uni, I started doing some analysis and coaching for the first team, the men's first team at uni. Um, I met a guy called Fran Alonso, who was the head coach at uni. He'd worked at Southampton with Pochettino and Koeman, and then he went to Everton. So I learned a lot from him, and he was probably a massive reason why I'm working in the game now. So I did like a lot of analysis at uni, which I think was quite unusual at that level at that time, 2019, I think that was. Um, and around the same time, started sort of like a lot of people publishing work on Twitter, um, different social media, mainly about Preston, but about loads of different things really. And then sort of gained a lot of following from there. And then it was actually around COVID. I quit my job as an accountant and just applied for roles in football, really. And that's how I ended up sort of in Belgium. So yeah, a bit of a unorthodox role, sort of journey, but a lot of people have sort of a similar sort of weird journey. So that's how that came about. And yeah, I've just been in Belgium ever since, really.
And what was it about working abroad that appealed to you rather than potentially, working in the UK where you were born?
Yeah. I applied for a few jobs in the UK, to be fair. First, I applied for a job at Rochdale, which I didn't get. Then I applied for a job at Barnsley, and I actually got the Ostend job because the CEO who had been at Barnsley had actually gone to Ostend. So I got sort of to the final stage of the Barnsley role, didn't get that, and then Ostend were looking for people. So that's how that came about, to be
I
fair.
see.
So I joined them sort of part time. I think it was 2020-21 season.
Mm.
Um, so that's how that came about. The role was the sort of ambition was never to work abroad. It's just that's how it worked out, really.
Mm. And was that based here or did you go over there at that time?
Yeah. So it was mainly remote to start with.
Mm.
As I said, I was part time to start with, just doing video reports. But then as I joined full time, split my time between Belgium and the UK. To be fair, obviously because of Brexit and stuff, it's a bit trickier now. Getting to and from Belgium, but I think like a lot of people, split my time, quite a lot of remote working, and then obviously on the ground in Belgium when I was there, go for sort of 2 3 weeks at a time and get as many games in as possible over there. And then mainly video scouting when I was in the UK. To be fair, which is the same as what I'm doing now, really. But yeah, I'd be open to moving abroad, working in Europe like full
Mm.
time. It's obviously a lot different to the UK, the level of football, but it's really interesting out there as well.
Mm. So tell us a little bit about the role that you currently play.
Yeah, so I'm now senior recruitment analyst at RWDM, as you said. Which, to be fair, we're quite a small team. There's just two of us full time recruiting. So it's very hands on day to day. Basically, just quite a senior role with the whole recruitment process. So looking at our game model and then looking at data every day and maintaining lists, databases of players of interest or
Mm.
different things. A lot of live scouting, a lot of video scouting, and then I suppose some research projects as well alongside that. So looking at KPIs, what you need to hit to be successful in Belgium, how do you get to a certain points per game and all that. I'm sure you're aware of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So it's quite a varied role. But yeah, video scouting is probably the main thing, just on a day-to-day basis, but loads of data within that as well. And yeah, it's really interesting to sort of work in a small team
Mm.
in a remote capacity because you sort of manage your own day on a day-to-day basis based on priorities and different things. So yeah, it's really interesting to be fair, and quite lucky I think to have such a wide ranging role rather than just being fixed to watching video or
Mm.
manipulating data. So yeah, really enjoying it.
Do you think that COVID accelerated the kind of influx of remote work within football? And after COVID finished, everybody kind of said, oh, actually, this
Yeah.
process really works.
Yeah, I think like a lot of even just normal office working. I think people have realised they don't need to be in the office 5 days a week. But particularly for football, I think if you're looking at roles coming up now, there's a lot more remote roles, um, which probably suits clubs better anyway.
Mm.
You get people, obviously you are remote, but you can get to games depending on where you're based. Especially with Europe as well. Like we scout loads of obscure markets, which we just couldn't be on the ground for anyway.
Mm.
So yeah, COVID definitely accelerated that, and I think it probably opened up a lot of eyes in terms of are we better just having remote workers just watching
Mm.
video, manipulating data? Do we need to be in the training ground every day? Don't get me wrong, it is good to be in the training ground every day. Like when I'm in Belgium, that's where obviously I spend my time. It's probably a bit easier to get a feel about the club and what the
Mm.
mood is around the club. But yeah, I think if you look at the roles coming up now, I'd say they're probably 50-50 or maybe even more remote. So yeah, I think it'll just get more and more like that, really. The main thing is trusting people to do the job. And I think if you are working in football, you obviously know the demands
Yeah.
but people working in football are passionate anyway, and we want to just engross ourselves in the game, and that's what you do, whether you're remote or I don't know
Mm.
what your situation is, but if you're in the training ground or remote, people are just working to the maximum every
Yeah.
day anyway.
Yeah, 100%. You touched a little bit earlier on some of the people that have maybe inspired you, who've been there along your journey. Do you
Yeah.
think to be a success in this industry, you kind of need that mentor figure and someone to guide you through it?
Yeah. It's hard for me to say. I can only talk about my own experience, but I know for a fact I was extremely lucky to meet Fran Alonso when I did. Obviously, he'd worked with Pochettino really closely as an assistant at Southampton. So, sort of working at uni alongside my degree in that sort of capacity with someone of that knowledge is probably quite unique. From like a tactical point of view, just learning about the game, getting different contacts. But I would also say Alex Neil, the ex-Preston manager at that time, was a massive sort of influence. Just in terms of watching his teams, how he set his teams up,
Mm.
and that sort of inspired me as well. But I suppose a lot of people have got their own mentors, whether
Mm.
that be friends or whatever, or people they've worked with in the game. But I think it's definitely important to have some kind of guidance, because football is such a vast. Obviously, it's just a game, but there's so many avenues you can go down. To have a mentor who can sort of guide you through, and I think once you have a mentor, you'll probably end up where you want to be in terms of what you want to focus on.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's really important. And I was obviously very lucky to meet Fran when I did. And as I said, without meeting Fran, I probably wouldn't have been in the same position that I am now.
Interesting. So after several years at Ostende, you moved over to RWDM. Um, how have you found that transition? What prompted that move for you?
Yeah. So it's been well documented in Belgium, but Ostend had a lot of financial issues at the end of last season. So basically, anyone who was going to move was sort of allowed to move. They obviously ended up getting relegated, which was a massive shame for the club, but um, that's how that came about. And my head of recruitment actually went from Ostend to Molenbeek, and that's how that came about. So I went with him.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, the CEO also went from Ostend to Molenbeek as well. So like a few of us have went over. A brand new project, to be fair, which was really exciting. They just got promoted to the first division again in Belgium for the first time in quite a number of years, I think.
Mm.
So it was sort of a blank canvas for us going in there. So obviously really exciting to. I think I'd had 3 seasons at the level by then.
Yeah.
So obviously a really competitive level Belgium. Depending on where you look, like the sixth or seventh highest rated league in Europe now. So really good to get that experience and then just go into a new club. It's quite different for me because part of the Eagle football group, Molenbeek. So it's part of a football group with Lyon, Botafogo, and Crystal Palace. So coming into that was quite a challenge, something I've obviously never worked with before. And you don't have full autonomy of sort of the recruitment process, which is a little bit tricky and a little bit of getting used to. So again, that was something that was really important for me to learn. But yeah, it has been really challenging, I'm not going to lie, like the whole sort of season. Obviously, there's some massive clubs at the level now in Belgium, some really good talents coming from sort of whether that be Scandinavia, Africa, Japan, massive level. So it's like a melting pot of just talent over there. So it's really difficult to sort of build a team and be competitive. But yeah, that's how that came about really. And yeah, it's been a really good season for learning. And it's probably been my toughest season, but the season where I've definitely learned the most.
It's interesting you talk about learning there because I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the stuff you touched on earlier regarding social media. How much of a learning ground was that content that you were posting on Twitter, and is it something
Yeah,
that you would advise people to do now?
yeah, 100%. Obviously, I speak to Liam quite a lot, who was on your podcast the other week as well, and he did something similar around the same time. I think it's just a case of not being scared of what people are going to say. And I suppose I had a sort of a first mover advantage in terms of analysis within PNE. There was no one else really doing that at the time. And yeah, it's just really interesting to hear different perspectives. And I did quite detailed tactical analysis. So that was my thing. Sort of less data side. And it was more like watching the game tactically and yeah, it's really important to sort of get feedback because you also never know who's looking at this kind of stuff. Obviously, we both know working in the game now. I'm sure we both read loads of pieces online all the time. And yeah, really important. And I would strongly advise people to just sort of take the plunge and do that. I was also on a podcast as well, like a weekly podcast, which also just gives you good exposure to talking to different people. Spoke to Joe Savage at the time, who was at P&E head of recruitment. Obviously, learned quite a lot from him. He's now at Hearts, and just speaking to ex pros, and so yeah, I would say that was a massive part of it. I think that was like around 2018-19. So I was about 2021 at the time. So yeah, definitely. If I didn't do that, I definitely wouldn't have probably had the confidence to apply for roles. And yeah, it's good even just getting like Twitter DMs from professionals who have read your pieces and just gaining network in that way. So yeah, it's really important, and even not just Twitter, but people make YouTube videos, obviously TikTok now as well, which may be slightly different, but yeah, wherever people can get their work out there, I'd obviously strongly advise that. Yeah.
I think it's interesting though, isn't it? Because you talk about the time that you broke into the game, think about the time that I broke into the game and some of the other guests we've had on the show. Are we now perhaps in a situation where there aren't enough roles for the amount of people that would want to work in football based on where, compared to maybe 2019,
Yeah.
2020?
Yeah, so like I said, I think maybe we had a little bit of a first mover advantage in terms of we were right at the start of that trend. Probably the clubs that we were working for were quite open-minded. I think a lot of clubs have now been forced just to take people from more obscure backgrounds. So obviously, I did an economics degree, and just like you said, we are just writing online. Yeah, now I think it is harder because even just watching a game now, if you go on Twitter, there's so many accounts analyzing games live, like Arsenal City yesterday. Just so many people on Sunday. Sorry, so many people just giving you live updates.
So
Tactically,
do you think people should potentially niche themselves a little bit more?
yeah,
Like everyone's talking about the Arsenal City game, talk
yeah.
about something else.
You talk about that game, but give your own take on it. Maybe find a different angle to most people. Obviously, you've had guests on who have gone down the data route, so they specialize in sort of data viz. I went down more tactical route. So football's all about problem solving. I think you really need to, like you say, develop a niche for yourself, whether that be maybe looking at more obscure leagues in Europe.
Mm.
Obviously, you've got set piece coaches now, set piece analysts. There's so many different avenues you can go down. I would just say to people, yeah, like you say, you need to differentiate because if you're looking at these roles now, sort of 300, 400, even 500 people applying for some of these roles.
Yeah.
And you can have as many qualifications as you want, but you need to stand out in some way and add value to the club that you want to work for. So
Mm.
yeah, obviously, just really need to find your niche, but I would stress like not to copy anyone
Mm.
because you need to obviously make your own decisions and problem solve yourself.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, Liam. We talk about maybe the influx of more people who want to work in the game than there are positions. It probably also keeps the average wage of a football professional that isn't
Yeah,
a footballer or
yeah,
a manager down where it probably shouldn't be. And you look at the amount of money that is in football. And unfortunately, if you post a job and you get 300 applicants,
mm,
somebody will do it for nothing,
yeah,
just for the exposure, which is really difficult. But it also means that people who maybe see themselves as right at the beginning of their journeys, depending on how willing you are to throw yourself into it, there is
yeah.
opportunity for you because so many clubs are trying to save money.
Yeah, it's a tough
So
balance as well. Like
mm,
if you look at if you look at the qualifications that some of these clubs want or the experience that they want, and then if you reflected that wage compared to another industry,
mm,
they know they can sort of do that, like you say, because it's so saturated. So
yeah,
some of that they need to, especially like the internships, like the non-paid stuff. Some of them are asking for like 30 hours a week.
yeah.
So yeah, people need to obviously make their own minds up about that, but football probably needs to be better as an industry because can definitely afford it in some ways.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because there's no kind of unionization, there's no group thought or movement there, but maybe that's something we see in the future. I was just going to ask you there about kind of other advice that you give to young scouts or people that are looking to become scouts for careers in the game. We've touched there on social media and how you can use that and maybe differentiate yourself. Is there anything else that you'd pass on, things that you've picked up?
Yeah, I'd say getting practical experience on the grass if you can gives you a different perspective. And we see a lot of analysis now, which I think is purely like exploratory stuff, like really abstract sort of online. And I would say that's not really what you'd find within the game. I'd say the main thing is just to get practical analysis and talk to people in the game. People don't want massive reports and like all these kind of different, like obviously people write about relationism, positionism, all this stuff at the moment, and there's loads of different sort of tactical angles going on. I'd say the main thing is watch the game yourself and problem solve yourself, and
Mm,
how can you help the coach or the recruitment team? Fundamentally, that's the main task within your role. But yeah, I was very lucky, like I said before, to be coaching at uni. Even at uni level, you just learn so much about what it takes to win a game.
mm,
Um, I think online we can get sort of disconnected from the actual 90 minutes of football and what goes into that. So if you
mm.
can get practical experience and just network and get about to games and speak to different people, even just doing stuff like this, obviously just keep speaking to people, get on podcast,
Yeah.
whatever it is, just don't be sort of too abstract with where you're coming from. Just speak to people who probably have a good idea of what it needs. As well, I'd say it doesn't really matter what background you've got. Obviously, I did an economics degree, so I'm probably quite process driven, but I've met people from loads of different backgrounds working within the game. So I'd say don't be disheartened if you don't play to a high level or if you haven't played to a level or anything like that. I'd just say if you back yourself and you've got a niche, then just apply for jobs because there's nothing wrong with getting rejected at the end of the day, as long as you get good feedback or you know where you went wrong. Um, yeah, just put yourself out there, really.
So since moving into the football world, obviously off the back of doing that degree that you've mentioned, what other qualifications have you looked to do? I assume you've done some coaching stuff as well.
Yeah,
In terms of scouting side, have you done any of those qualifications
yeah.
yourself?
No, I've not really touched on those yet. I'm looking to do like a sports directorship degree, but we all know how expensive this kind of thing is now, especially in the UK.
Mm,
So I've looked at doing stuff like that on the continent where it's a lot more accessible.
Mm,
Obviously done my FA talent IDs. That's all I've got sort of professionally wise, but I've done Tableau courses, I've done Python courses. Yeah, I think you've got to take it up on yourself as well to sort of keep learning.
mm,
We've A good thing as well is even if you're not looking to apply for jobs, go on job sort of descriptions and see what skills they're asking for.
mm.
Um, like there's loads of different skills that clubs are now asking for, and you can sort of learn them yourself if you put time into it.
Mm.
Even just basic YouTube tutorials, or you can get a lot of courses now, like Python courses, etc. So yeah, I don't really have many professional qualifications to do with football, but it's something that probably as I become more senior,
Yeah.
obviously work towards.
Well, I think that segues us quite well into the final question that I have for you, really, which is, your journey isn't over. Kind of always ask this question. And this podcast is about the journey as a whole, not just the beginning. So what do you hope to do in the medium to long-term future? And do you like to set goals and things that you want to achieve?
Yeah, I don't know how everyone else works, but I like to set goals with timelines. I know a lot of people don't like doing that. But I wanted to be working in football by the age of 25. So I've already sort of ticked that off. And I've had 3, 4 really good seasons in 1A in Belgium in quite a senior role, which is, I'd say for my age, quite good experience. And we've seen that the recruitment side of the game is just growing exponentially now. Like even in sort of there's athletic articles about, technical scouts moving from X to Y to Z, and obviously all the Brighton players, scouts going to Chelsea, and it's growing massively. So I want to sort of keep learning. We've got massive experience now in Belgium, and medium to long term, probably just keep progressing, like in terms of role. Obviously, it'd be quite hard to make that next step now, whether that be at sort of a bigger club, a bigger league, or a more senior position within a club. Um, but yeah, just keep learning. As I said, like coding, visualizations, scouting, networking, meeting more people, and becoming more sort of involved in the process of recruitment from in the finishing end. So
Mm.
organizing with agents, sort of doing that kind of thing, which I've started doing more of.
Mm.
So yeah, I've not really set sort of the next big step, but yeah, just the main thing is to keep learning and keep enjoying it. I don't know about yourself, whether you set sort of timeline goals, but I just take it season on season. And
Mhm.
at the start of the season, I want to be better than I was sort of every season, really. I'm quite pleased to say I've been able to do that. So
Mm.
yeah, and you learn massively, as you'll know, season to season. There's so many different challenges that get thrown up. Goals change, objectives change, and
Yeah.
yeah, the longer you're in the game, I think you just keep on getting better and better. And
Yeah.
I would just stress to people just to keep learning, really, and don't get too comfortable.
Yeah, like a development mindset. I think
Yeah,
that's very pertinent. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I think this conversation's been really enlightening. I think especially the Patreon members that are looking to work in the game, I think will take a lot from it. If anyone does have any specific questions for Ollie that you want me to pass on, I'm more than happy to do that. Feel free to reach out. You can reach out on Twitter or on TikTok as well if you're not on the Patreon. And do check that out. It's £5 a month, and it'll give you access to all of these exclusive conversations, one-to-one guidance with me, and much more. Thank you for tuning in to episode 11 of the My Footballing Journey series, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you, Ollie.
thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. I've been Joe, and I'll catch you next time.